Yeah, okay. Okay.
So this is the Gates family
Right.
headstone.
Yeah.
And you can see the mother is buried there. But as you walk down, Arthur Noel Gates, he was killed in the First World War, serving with the Canadians at, what's the big Canadian battle? Vimy Ridge, thank you. Yes, that was it. But it shows a family whose members gave their lives in 2 world wars.
Okay.
Because underneath here, you'll see Sergeant Geoffrey John Gates.
Right. Okay.
Under here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
He was a sergeant, again in the Royal Air Force Reserve at first. He was a wireless operator and air gunner.
Right.
And although the service records say he was killed on active service, it's probably as a result of ferrying aircraft from one base to another,
Yep.
or during a training exercise, because it says he was killed on flying duties
Right.
on the 5th of March 1943. So I don't think it was on active
Yeah.
bombing raids.
Yeah.
He served with number 12 Operational Training Unit, which was formed in April 1941 as part of number 1 group of Bomber Command. When the Second World War broke out, the Royal Air Force Volunteer Reserve comprised 6,646 pilots, 1,625 observers and 1,946 wireless operators. So there was quite a substantial reserve to call on at the outset. But of course a lot of the pilots were killed early in the war, and with the Battle of Britain was always desperately short of pilots. Once the Battle of Britain had been won, then Bomber Command demanded the personnel for their part of the Royal Air Force undertaking the bombing missions against Germany and other European areas. They had a slightly different uniform from the rest of the RAF, and they had to wear a brass and cloth patch on their arms saying VR, which meant Volunteer Reserve.
Okay.
And it was kind of sort of a bit discriminatory, saying, well, you're not really, top rank Air Force.
But
part-time
TA, part-timer.
Yeah, exactly. But during 1943, the Air Ministry realised that was not very sensible, and that differentiation was ordered to be removed.
It's a bit clever,
They were then part of the full.
It's like when a soldier and a TA soldier, they think that we like jokers. That's the same thing. Happens now. Still happens now.
Yeah. Unfortunately, remember I said there was a difference between the RAF Volunteer Reserve and the Auxiliary Air Force.
Right.
And Geoffrey Gates was recruited during the as part of the Auxiliary Air Force. So that's the sort of badge he would have worn as an air gunner.
Okay.
And that's a position that he would have been in the aircraft there.
Unbelievable. Yeah. And I was freezing in the winter. That was like so cold.
Well, you see them in all these
bomber
jackets.
Yeah, bomber jackets.
That's where the rain comes from.
Yeah, that's it.
All the sheep fleece inside.
That's it. Yeah.
watch your footing under here. 'Cause
Okay.
there's lots of roots and
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So this is another Commonwealth War Graves Commission headstone, and it's again another person who served in the RAF.
Yep.
And you can see, despite what I said about the standardisation of the headstones, there's no indication of a religious motif on here, and they've included his nickname,
Right.
Larry.
Larry.
Noakes.
Okay.
Now he too, Sergeant Stanley Lawrence Noakes, he too was an air gunner.
Okay.
And he served. He was in the RAF, not the reserve or the auxiliary RAF, but the proper RAF.
Proper. Yep.
And he served in 149 Squadron.
Right.
In a short Sterling bomber, and that's a picture of the sort of aircraft and the number of crew that served in the Sterlings. Not as famous as the Lancasters or the Wellingtons, but one of the earlier bombers, but it still did
damage. Yeah.
Good service.
Good
It was
service,
the first four-engined bomber
Okay.
that the RAF had in the Second World War. He actually enlisted before the war in March 1938
Right.
as an aircraft hand. But as I say, he worked his way up, became a sergeant, and he became an air gunner. And you can see the sort of area where there's a gun position in the front of the aircraft and the nose there. There would have been one further back as well. So once you get strapped in there, you're there until
Till
it's all done.
Yeah. Done. Yeah.
There's no way out
Yeah.
again. So that's where he is. And he died on the 9th of August. His aircraft was shot down
Right.
in 1943, and he was at age 23 at the time. I say shot down again. I presume that the aircraft managed to get back somewhere,
Right.
And his body was removed from the aircraft, because this is the family grave.
Right. Okay.
And it's a bit bizarre, really, because you've got the Commonwealth War Graves Commission headstone.
Yeah.
Now, families had a choice.
Right.
They could either commemorate their war dead on their own headstones, like Hayter was, or you could have a Commonwealth War Graves Commission stone.
Yeah.
This is a family vault, and clearly the family have decided to commemorate him.
Yep.
Stanley Noakes died August 1943. But because the headstone here has been lost,
Right. Okay. Yeah.
the Commonwealth War Graves Commissioner have decided to stick
This
one
one.
of these
Yeah.
in the middle of the grave. That wasn't the family's choice.
Right.
The family's choice was they didn't want one of these. They wanted him commemorated in the family.
Family
grave.
way. Yeah.
But after a while, the Commonwealth War Graves Commission has a legal duty to ensure that the graves of all Commonwealth War dead since 1914
So they check them
are
every year, or they check them every? How does it
They
work?
used to come round every 3 years.
Right. Okay.
To check that everything was okay. And this is relatively new, this headstone.
Right. Okay.
It replaced something that wasn't there.
Yeah.
But they'll clean and they'll re-incise, or they'll completely replace as necessary. But like everything else with financial cuts, they now come round on all cemeteries like Nunhead once every 5 years.
So cutting down the money. Yeah.
Okay, let's just be careful as we go out.
Yep.
We'll make our way down to the Anglican Chapel.
Okay.
Then we'll finish at the bottom of the main avenue.
Okay.
This time of year, that cow parsley.
Yeah.
In the spring, it's all Second one here.
Oh, really?
Love
Okay.
bombs.
Yeah.
Mainly in the northwest corner, I think it was, but
Right.
obviously the headstones got damaged, some got destroyed, monuments got destroyed completely.
Yeah.
If you work your way around, there's lots of monuments where you can see where there would have been a chain or some sort of railings around them.
Right.
They disappeared for the war effort.
Yeah.
The people we saw were saying, what square number are we in? They were all the square numbers, of which there are about 150 across the cemetery. They were marked by metal indicators on the ground. They all got taken out at that time as well, so none of them survived.
Yeah.
Quite likely all that stuff is probably actually at the bottom of the Thames estuary, quite honestly, because you can't build Spitfires out of cast iron. I think a lot of it, handing over your saucepans and all that for the aluminium, it's quite likely a reasonable amount of that was a moral support, making it look like you were making an effort and contribution, rather than necessarily becoming aircraft or whatever.
Yeah.
As I said earlier, there's an urban myth that there was an anti-aircraft gun on top of the chapel.
Right.
Obviously, it had at the time peaked roofs, so it would not have been exactly very practical. So that's the urban myth, but there probably was a fire watch station up there, because obviously you've got a fairly good view.
Yeah.
Particularly in the dark and in the blackout, you'd have been able to see fires over quite a large area as they broke out. And obviously incendiaries were one of the things that German aircraft bombing raids would have dropped, and you would have had fire watchers in lots of factories and places, ideally people up on the roof, so that if their incendiary landed, they were literally there to sweep it off the roof immediately, or pour a bucket of sand over it or whatever. And then so people would sign up to that, and then end of 1940, fire watching became compulsory, so you would have had to do it at some point. Arguably the worst casualty in the cemetery from the bombing raids in the Second World War was the what we know as the Dissenters' Chapel. So there was a smaller version of this chapel down in a corner of the cemetery where all the non-Anglicans are buried.
Yeah.
And that got bombed. That was hit by bombs during the war.
Is there still anything there?
The cemetery company demolished it
Okay,
in the 1950s. What was left of it was demolished by the cemetery company, and so unless it's buried under the ground there's nothing above ground that indicates it anymore. It's sort of now space. That was lost. And then the people who were in the crypt there were actually brought, there weren't many, there was only about half a dozen. They were brought and put in the crypt here. So like quite a number of cemeteries, what may have had more than one chapel at one originally, we dashed down to the one that was used for all services after the war.
Okay.
And would have been used for those until about 1968. So,
That's it.
The chapel isn't called.
No, I know. 75. Yeah, 70,
So this is
Arston. Yeah. Did they find a person, or did they ever find the person? No, you never.
I think local people knew who the lads were. But
Okay.
You couldn't prove it.
All right.
There was also an